China's exports have seen their sharpest decline since February as new tariffs continue to weaken demand from the United States. The latest customs data shows that China's overall exports fell by 1.1% in October, reversing a strong increase the month before and falling short of market expectations. The decline comes after months of Chinese manufacturers rushing to send goods abroad in anticipation of higher US tariffs. Despite Beijing's efforts to diversify trade relationships, the United States remains a key destination for Chinese exports, and the impact of tariffs has been significant. Shipments to the United States dropped more than 25% compared to the same month last year. Moreover, exports to the European Union and Southeast Asia did edge higher, but not enough to offset the decline in US demand. Meanwhile, in a contrary development, exports to the United States rose by 1.8% on a month-to-month basis in October. Yet, Chinese imports from the United States declined by 11.6% during the same period. This monthly data by China's General Administration of Customs had come ahead of talks between President Xi Jinping and Donald Trump, which temporarily eased trade tensions at the end of October. Recent talks between the two leaders resulted in a one-year pause on certain tariff measures, though most duties remain in place. US-bound Chinese goods continue to face average tariff levels around 45%. And at the same time, China's overall import growth has also slowed. Imports rose just 1% in October, marking their slowest expansion in 5 months and reflecting continued weakness in domestic consumption. Imports of crude oil, iron ore and soybeans did increase, while copper imports declined amid weakness in the construction sector. Now, of course, joining us to discuss this is Collins Chong-Yu-Keat. He's a foreign affairs, security and strategy analyst, and he joins us live from the University of Malaya in Kuala Lumpur. Thank you very much for joining us, Collins.
Thank you, Thomas.
Pleasure to have you. China's exports here have seen their sharpest fall since February after, of course, the US tariff bite. How serious is this slowdown for Beijing's economy?
We have seen how this explains well the urgency being shown by President Xi in wanting to have these tariff talks with the US. Trump has been right all the while that China has been reliant on the US market for decades now, and the cards and chips are still with Washington in terms of compelling Beijing to do more in terms of reducing the tariff surplus and having this level playing field in accepting more of the US goods. And this is now being reflected with this reality. It's a harsh wake-up call to Beijing that despite its efforts to have this increased fallback options of leveraging on different markets to replace the US market, it has not been successful so far. And the US also has the options of other markets as compared to China. So we have seen how Southeast Asia, East Asia and South Asia have been the traditional places for Beijing as part of its economic friendshoring efforts. But of course also with BRICS as well as the global South. But we have yet to see the purchasing demand, the buying power of these regions and these nations. They simply cannot substitute the sheer volume of the US market. So this is a wake-up call to Beijing that despite efforts to increase its own friendshoring efforts, it has clearly failed. And that the only way forward is to have these productive talks with Washington, and of course also to have this a much more a fairer trade deal with the US. So we have seen also how the US still has the options with allies, with the EU, with these new growth centers in Southeast Asia and other global South countries also, simply because of the fact that they have been reliant primarily on the US market for their growth model, for their economic progressive models. And they do not see the Chinese economic model as a reliable long-term support system for them because of this weak productivity growth and this weak purchasing power from China. We have seen this this downturn in terms of domestic economic woes. So simply because of the fact that the US still remains as a primary economic support for these regions, and hence the equation has always been on the advantage of Washington in terms of trade, in terms of tariff, and hence we have seen how Beijing is now compelled to increasingly, be aligned with, Trump's moves in this regard, as can be seen in the tariff talks earlier. Thomas.
Yes, and Collins, China will also restore soybeans licenses to 3 US firms on November the 10th. How much of a concession was this, Beijing, and how much will it advance Washington?
Well, we've seen, Trump will have anticipated this move, and and of course, this is also with regards to other, parallel measures in place in terms of not only on soybeans, but on the overall trade volume with China, and of course also on the subject of critical minerals, which of course also China has been, increasingly relying on that to be used as a bargaining chip with the US, and now with this new data and statistics that the downturn of the exports and this increasingly this Beijing being at a disadvantage in terms of this tariff deal with the US. So now, of course, they might want to have this to use this soybean purchase as a gesture of positivity with regards to its relations with Washington, and of course also hoping for Washington to give a fairer trade deal with Beijing. So I think it's a positive move by Beijing, and that now it shows its hands now, and he has proven Trump to be right all the while, and we will see that the advantage still lies with Washington in terms of getting the needed economic returns from Beijing.
Yes, Collins, do stay with us as we have further updates coming out of China. We move on now and over to Europe, where the mission of China to the European Union has formally protested the visit of Taiwan's Vice President to the European Parliament. China has stated that the visit goes against its One China principle and amounts to interference in its internal affairs, adding that it could strain political trust between Beijing and the European Union. Meanwhile, Taiwan, on its part, maintains that it has the right to engage with other countries and international institutions. Now, the visit in question saw Taiwan's Vice President Hsiao Bi-khim travel to Belgium yesterday, where she spoke at a session with lawmakers inside the European Parliament in Brussels. The appearance of Taiwan's Vice President formed part of a gathering hosted by an international parliamentary alliance that discusses global approaches to China policy. This trip marks a significant moment in Taiwan's outreach efforts towards Europe, especially given that the island only holds formal diplomatic ties in Europe with the Vatican. During the trip, Taiwan's VP Hsiao was accompanied by Taiwan's Foreign Minister Lin Chia-lung. Moreover, reports also say that the former Taiwanese president is expected to visit Berlin for a conference next week. Collins joins us once again to discuss this. Collins, China has launched protests after this visit by the Taiwanese official in Brussels. How significant is this, given Europe's usually cautious approach to Taiwan?
Well, Europe didn't accidentally host Taiwan's VP. Brussels knew exactly what it was doing, and this is a classic European signaling that it won't let Beijing dictate who can or who cannot enter the European Parliament. So, of course, China has lodged a formal protest, but this we have seen how the EU is already in a confrontational cycle with Beijing, whether it's on EV tariffs, whether it's on tax equity reviews, on sanctions on Ukraine, China's support for Russia in Ukraine. So allowing a Taiwanese VP to appear in European Parliament is a way of saying that Europe also has its own leverage, and if Beijing was to escalate in economic terms with regards to the EU, then the EU will have these political tools to retaliate. So this is a political signaling, and that Brussels is also shifting from economic dependency to strategic balancing. So this high-level Taiwanese visit to the Parliament, is a calculated step in showing the EU is not afraid to open an alternative political channel, and at times where China is growing more in terms of bellicosity, in terms of assertiveness. So I think this is a soft hedging, and of course Europe is in need of Taiwan's semiconductor superiority, and of course we have seen how the European Parliament has always been the ground for this high-level values-based alignment in terms of democracy, in terms of human rights, And this is a classic political symbolic message to Beijing in all terms.
Yes, Collins Chong Yu Keat, thank you very much for joining us here on the programme and for bringing your insight here on News.